Yeah, so this right here is the pregnancy phone. So I told my wife if it's an emergency, she has to call 3 times in a row. But if not, I hope she can hold off. But yeah, I'm just, it's just labor. I mean, come on. I'm glad to be here with you guys today. As John said, I was from Bryan College. I have been there a little over 2 years. And I was kind of thrown into it as saying, hey, you know what? We want to start an online program. And Ryan, we think you're the person to do it. Okay, so there was absolutely nothing in place when I got there. I was an admissions counselor for them. I worked my way up. And they said, we want to do this in 2010. So we got approval from SACS. And if any of you have ever done that process, you realize how long that can take. And then we launched this program. And just some of our history, we have done adult programs since 1993 at Bryan College. So we did it on site since 1993. And as I said, we initiated the discussion in March of 2010, saying we want to do an online program. We were looking at trends in the market, and we realized, hey, we're behind. So we did that. We began a marketing campaign in November of 2010, and we started our first students in March. Okay, so a very tight window of process. Now, as we got into this, we did some research into the enrollment process and realized we have a lot of competitors, and a lot of big competitors, and a lot of people that have been doing this a lot longer and are a lot more efficient than we were. Any of you familiar with the 2020 college report that the Chronicle put out? Have you read that report? Got a few hands going up. Okay, we looked extensively, or I looked extensively at this report because I wanted to know, well, where are the students going? What is the student going to look like, not now, but in 5 to 10 years? And that's kind of where we got this idea. We looked at the reporting numbers and we saw, well, the adult population is projected to grow around 18% per year. The traditional population on campus is expected to remain flat. And you can see just the growth of distance ed from 2000 to 2007. And then we looked at this report and we said, well, what does our students want? Well, they want convenience, they want flexibility, and they want support. And this is kind of the way we designed our enrollment processes to do that. Now, how many of you are directly involved in admissions? How many admissions people? Is it most student support side? Do you have any faculty in here? All right, perfect. Yeah, great. Okay, so kind of give you an idea of what the 2020 report said, and this has actually been alluded to in this conference. We just heard some of this as well, is that what's the future of higher education going to look like? Well, you have your elite schools, and then you have your for-profit and community colleges that are doing very well, right? Harvard is not necessarily going to have to change the way it does business to attract students there, correct? They can use whatever model they continue to use. For-profits and community colleges are doing very well also. And then there's everyone else in the middle, right? And I would consider, you may be on one of these sides. I consider Bryan College right here in the middle. You know, what's distinguishing us from everyone else? Well, if you look, our main question at Bryan was, what do we have to do to remain competitive? What is it that we have to do to remain competitive? And we were looking at what we call the funnel. And we say, well, if our competitors, if you fill out a form, anyone ever fill out a form at a for-profit school requesting information? How quickly were you contacted? While you're filling it out, 5 minutes, right? And that's kind of what we started to see. We're like, what are we doing? You know, what are we doing? And we realized we've got to do something about our whole process. So here's what I call the funnel. And I don't know, you may have something similar at your school, but this is my enrollment funnel. This is my prospects at the top. So that's all my lead sources, where they come from. Whether it's email marketing, word of mouth, Facebook, LinkedIn, directories, anything. That's our prospect funnel. That's our main part of the funnel. And then from those students, or from these prospects, we are working to get someone to apply. And that's what I call students, is they've applied, they filled out an application, and we're working on getting their documents. So that is a student. And then I have at the bottom is a start. That means they walked in the door, they logged into my online class, and began classes with us. So that's my enrollment funnel. Now, what I wanted to do is simplify each part of this. So I started looking at prospects and students and starts and said, where am I holding people up? Where do we have barriers in this process? Because if I go to a for-profit and I fill out a form and they contact me, they can probably get me enrolled that day, right? They can probably get me enrolled that day. When I took over this at Bryan, you could probably get enrolled in about 3 to 4 weeks, just to be particularly honest. And that's just not good enough for the environment that we face. So what I've done, and I wanted this to be somewhat interactive because I'm not claiming to know all the answers and what works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to talk about a fictional college called Green Acres College. And we're going to evaluate their entire process. Okay? We're going to look at the different pieces of their enrollment, and we're going to kind of see where the barriers are. Now, this is going to be a very nitty-gritty, maybe day-to-day processes part of this. So a lot of the stuff we've heard has been overall, philosophical, theory-based, trends. I'm going to get into the day-to-day stuff, which my people think I'm obsessed with. It's not like I have a stopwatch or anything measuring how quickly they make phone calls, but I mean, we could talk about that. So here we go. So Green Acres College. I picked Kentucky just because I'm here. But it is a small, private, nonprofit school in Kentucky. Okay, so this is the college we're looking at. Small, private, nonprofit. Their traditional school has been around a while, right? Probably like many of yours. Been around for 82 years. They have 800 students enrolled. Non-traditional school is about 4 years old. They have 275 students enrolled, and we have 2 degrees. We have a criminal justice degree, and we have a business degree. Okay? Our current staff, we have 1 director, 1 AC, which I call an admissions counselor, and a student support person. Okay, so that's our fictional school. Now, here's our job duties, and I won't go into too much detail. It's probably very similar to some of your schools. Our admissions counselor is responsible for everything from when that lead gets put under their name to when they begin the program. Okay, so if someone applied, let's say if David applies to Green Acres College and I'm his admissions counselor, I'm going to take him all the way from application to start. He's going to work directly with me. Okay, I'm never going to pass him off. He's my lead. He's my start. The goal for this admissions counselor was 200 starts last year. 200 starts. They work 8 to 5. They can answer questions regarding admissions, but they can't answer questions about financial aid. They can't answer questions about billing. They have to transfer the student for that in this particular example. Now, the student support person outlines what we call a graduation plan. It's saying, hey, David, this is the classes you need to get from where you are now to graduating from our school. Okay, so the student support person does that. They evaluate the transcripts. They advise students, and they register students in all systems. Okay, and then the director does marketing, course development, and supervision. So he's not doing much, or she. Just kidding. All right, so the president wants to, I want to keep my job. The president wants to expand online programs, probably like a lot of yours have, and they ask for a proposal to do so. So before we go forward, I want to talk about our current structure. What are some things that are some red flags that pop up? Yes?
First of all, the hours of the admissions counselors are completely wrong. The inability of any staff member who answers the phone to at least look up basic questions regarding financial aid is all wrong. That needs to be changed.
Okay.
Those are the 2 things right off the bat that I saw that need to be changed.
Okay, so we got admissions counselor hours, 8 to 5. If you're making a phone call to a prospect, when are you going to catch them? After 5, right? Or not before 8, I hope. But after 5. Yeah, and then the admissions counselor training themselves. You know, why can't they answer questions about financial aid? Why does the financial aid office have to be the person that holds on to that information? If they're so concerned as financial aid, why don't they cross-train our admissions counselors? Okay, so that's 2 things. What about other things?
How about the fact that your admissions counselor is dedicated to this program, which probably implies that your traditional admissions counselors don't talk about your online programs?
Okay, so we have a dichotomy. We have admissions counselors just focused on adult. We have traditional admissions counselors just focused on traditional, so they probably don't care about what we're talking about over here. Okay? What about the starts for admissions counselor per year? 200? Does that seem reasonable? I got a no in the back.
Question.
Sure.
When you say starts, you're meaning enrollment.
Enrollments, correct. Sorry.
Somebody could sign up for 4 classes, that would be 1 student, 70, 50 students, admissions counselor.
Yeah. So is 200 good for admissions counselor per year? Okay, we'll talk about it. We'll talk. That's good. What about the director? He's doing okay? She's doing okay? We don't know too much about them yet. Okay, so let's look. So here's some barriers, and you guys said some of this. And this is very similar to what I did at Bryan. I actually applied as a student, incognito. I wanted to know how long it took to get through the process. And so here's the director. Number one, how is the director tracking these leads at the top? How is he she tracking these lead sources, number one? Because their responsibility, if they don't populate the top part of the funnel with their marketing activity and their generating lead activity, how in the world is my admissions counselor going to do anything? Okay, so how are they populating the top part? Is the structure good for that? Hours, somebody said hours, admissions counselor hours, of course, the best time to contact people is after 5 o'clock. So if your admissions counselors or your particular school are working 8 to 5, I guarantee they're missing phone calls. They're missing opportunities to contact a student.
I work 8 to 5, 2 days a week, and 10 to 7, 3 days.
Yeah.
I don't have any calls after 5 o'clock.
Really?
I've been doing it for a year and a half. If there's phone calls, I'm making the phone call. I'm not so much getting the phone call. And a lot of times when I make them, I hear, I'm cooking supper. Can you call me back? Or I'll email you, and I get that email at 10 o'clock at night.
Interesting.
So I guess it depends on
Yeah.
what's going on. And we're still new. We've only been in the program a year and a half, and it may be different
Yeah.
3 years down the road. But I've been keeping the data on it just to see how many
Yeah.
calls I get. And it's the same way with our financial aid. She stays 10 to 7 as well. And
Interesting.
same thing. So
Yeah, we've had 30% of our contacts at Bryan happen after 5 o'clock.
I just wanted that. Yeah.
Yeah, so about 30%. Uh-huh.
I think part of that is just the way we train students, that students don't think they can get a hold of
Yeah.
anyone after 5 o'clock. So until they've actually made those contacts and know that somebody's there after 5 o'clock, they're probably not. But that's still a good time to make phone calls.
Yeah.
Do that to make
Yeah, that is what we're doing, is we're making phone calls to students. Okay. Start volume per year. If you look at industry, Jim Dunn wrote, have any of you read Jim Dunn's enrollment book? So this industry standard for start volume per admissions counselor is around 100 to 120 starts per year. Now, your admissions counselor may not do everything that this admissions counselor does, and of course that would vary your start volume, but this can also be a barrier in structure. And when I came aboard at Bryan, I kind of realized they're missing people because they're overloaded. So by spreading them out and hiring more people, we have kind of helped the overload. So they're more effective at recruiting. Yes, in the back.
talking a lot about emails. Are you receiving more emails or more phone calls? I mean, how about phone calls? Are you getting more emails or more phone calls?
From students,
Yes, communication, which is based, electronic or voice?
we do, which is more.
Yes.
We do, we make more phone calls than we send emails. And from students, I mean, it just kind of varies. We've gotten text, we've gotten, phone calls. Yeah, we do all kinds of weird stuff. You're probably looking at a 50-50. I mean, and that's just a guesstimation. But I don't count it as a contact for my admissions counselors unless they physically get a response. So if they call, if they called you 4 times and sent you 3 emails, and then you responded with an email, that's a contact. Okay, so I would count that as a contact. And I didn't talk about the student support, but a lot of times with some schools is the registrar has to approve, or the registrar may do transcript evaluations. And that was the case at our school for a while, and it was taking weeks and weeks and weeks to get a transcript back, when I can go to, another school and they can do it in a matter of days. So that's something to watch out for barriers as well, and we'll talk more about that.
Can I ask you, what
Sure.
point did you evaluate the transcript? On application, upon inquiry?
We'll talk about that, because we're going to talk about transcript evaluation in just a sec. Right. Okay, so let's look at prospects. So where do they come from for Green Acres? Well, here's their leads. Their leads come from radio, TV, billboard, word of mouth, Facebook, and directory placements. Okay, so probably similar to some of the stuff you do, or you guys do as well. Current AC receives generally about 39 leads a week. Okay, they receive about 39 leads a week. They track them on a spreadsheet. Okay, they track these leads on a spreadsheet. That should make you cringe a little. They attempt to contact them once by email or phone. They will leave a message if they don't get them, and they will consider that a contact. Leads are contact based on a first in, first out. Okay, so if I have 10 leads on Monday, I will contact those 10 leads on Monday before I contact any leads on Wednesday. Okay? And the AC attempts to get prospects to fill out an application and mail in a fee and the application. Okay? So what are some barriers here? Y'all love it, don't you? This is true. This could be true at some of your schools as well. I mean, this is relying on the postal system as far as timing. Sometimes you get in barriers, well, we've always done it this way, or we've always required a fee, and no one knows why. Well, all you're doing is slowing down the process for the student. Okay? What else? Okay, he's saying sending one contact or inquiring just once. Anybody know how many times you should try to contact a student in 48 hours? Any guesses? 3? Okay, at least. All right, we'll talk about that. What else? Yes? Yeah, no CRM. And a lot of times it's an integration of system problem. You know, you're tracking prospects here with this system, but it doesn't integrate with our CRM, and it's just a mess, right? Nothing's integrated. So technology will solve a lot of these problems. So yeah, you guys identified most of them. Industry standard for lead volume, if you're looking at it, I did a 10% start is what I usually use at Bryan. So I consider if I get 2,000 leads a year, I'm assuming that 10% of them will enroll. And that's probably a lofty goal. Just to be honest, that's probably a lofty goal. Contact time of prospect. We go 6 total times in 48 hours. And we classify leads based on 3 things: hot, warm, and cold. Because you guys just said that if I fill out an application for a for-profit, they're on the phone as I'm filling it out, somebody said, right? We consider a lead as hot if it's 48 hours or less. And we're going to try to contact them 6 times. I'm not going to leave a message on their phone until the 6th time I try to contact them. Okay? And our system automatically sends some emails out, but you may have people email in between if that's a preferred method of contact for the student. After 48 hours, your lead is probably done because they're shopping. They're shopping schools. Generally, that's what happens. They fill out, especially if it's from a directory, they're just shopping. So if you're late on contacting them, another school already did. And so warm leads is 48 to 1 week, so 48 hours to 1 week, and then cold leads is anything over a week. So we have a week time for leads here. We also don't do first in, first out. Because the last in, first out is how we do it. So maybe I try to contact a particular lead on Monday. They didn't call. I get a lead Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Well, I'm contacting that lead on Tuesday morning. I'm not worried about Monday just yet. I'll get back to it. Okay, so the last lead that comes in, we're going to contact them immediately. All right? Our system, and you may think about how to do this, it goes into the admissions counselor's CRM, and it says, please contact this lead. If they have 15 minutes to do so. If they don't contact them in 15 minutes, it moves to the next admissions counselor. So like that. Because my concern is the student, not whether the admissions counselor is getting the proper lead volume. I want the student to be serviced. Yes?
What's the CRM?
This is Leads 360 for the, and I don't have a stock or anything like that. So mailed application, of course, is insane. I don't know if anyone still does that, but we did that when I got there, and I'm like, no. We need to get rid of the mailed application. And it should be simple. If you ever filled out an application for a school that's not simple, it kind of annoys me. No, I don't want to have to go and find my school and attach stuff, and It's just frustrating. So I looked at simplifying the application, and and ask yourself, why an application fee? This was a hard one for us, and it was a hard sell for us. Well, yeah, I'm going to give it up. I'm going to give it up because I would rather the barrier of paying the fee. If a student will not fill out an application because of a $30 application fee, I mean, come on. Are they worth more as a student or worth more as a $30 fee? So we actually found that to be a barrier of why some people did not finish their application was a fee. So now I don't care if they pay it. Yes?
Do you ever help students, a lead, when you've got the contact with them, to go ahead and just
Waive it?
right there on, no,
Oh.
right there on the phone or however you're communicating with them to do the application on the spot,
Sure.
as opposed to just telling them to do it?
Yeah, he's talking about walking through the student with the application, and we'll get to that too. So, yeah, so here's your barriers in prospect. Fees, mailing stuff, difficult applications. You guys hit most of this. And then this one's really big, the contact time. We found that to be really big because we were losing a lot of students. I mean, this is about Green Acres. After the application is filled out, the admissions counselor will enter it into the system. Okay? Transcripts are sent directly from the student. So the student initiates the transcript process. They send them directly in at Green Acres. Transcript evaluation takes 1 to 2 weeks on a good day. All right? And it is approved and sent back, and then the student support person fills out the application. And then the admissions counselor completes the acceptance process and mails the acceptance letter and the grad plan. And then the student must submit an enrollment deposit to hold their spot in this particular school. So, looking at this, what are some barriers? Yeah, refilling out the application, number one, is my admissions counselor sitting there typing in stuff for the application. We've got to find a way to integrate that, right? That's another technology thing. Okay, what about the transcript sent directly from the student's institution? What could you do? Order it for them, right? Some schools order it for them. Some schools, what about, how many of your schools do an unofficial acceptance? A few, okay? Using unofficial transcripts, unofficially accept a student while they get their officials in. What does it mean? What? They're moving in the process. Okay, what does it mean from your end? Does it mean anything? No, right? It doesn't mean anything at all. It's not an official acceptance into your school, but it gets the student thinking, hey, I'm moving. I'm heading into this enrollment. Transcript evaluation. And I don't know if you guys deal with this. This was a big one for us, is how to get that from the registrar piece to cross-training admissions counselors to be able to kind of look at them and say, hey, you, based on this, you'll have between this many and this many hours. And then getting our student support person to say they have the authority on that. So how many of you have the registrar over all the transcripts, traditional and non-traditional? Yeah. Yeah.
Which if you're dealing with a region, you're probably going to have 8 schools that you work with predominantly. If you work with the registrar's office and you know what transfers and what, you can do it yourself.
Sure.
Hassle, but at Brown Acres University, our registrar's office, I mean,
Green. You can call them whatever.
I'm talking
Oh,
about
your school. Oh, okay.
our registrar's office to deal with the volume of transcript evaluation, wanted to put an extra fee in.
Yeah, yeah. And see, these barriers just kind of sneak up based on what we've done for so long. And that's what I was finding at Bryan, or at Green Acres, is that they were just sneaking up. Can you edit that? Okay, so let's see. So here we go. We talked about unofficial. We talked about cross-training our admissions counselors. You mentioned helping fill out the application, but also maybe helping. We've had a lot of questions about FAFSA, which has become super simplified now, right? Because it imports the student's tax information. So sometimes on the phone, our admissions counselors will direct them to the site. They won't help them fill out the info because I'm like, we're not touching that. But they will direct them to the site and explain kind of the process of that. And that's helped a lot too, because generally students, when you say FAFSA, I think they have this philosophy that, oh my gosh, it's going to take hours. But it really doesn't. I mean, if you can import your tax data in 5 minutes. Sure.
Last slide.
Sure.
At Green Acres, do you have one person that did that or 2 people? And if you only had one, did that person ever
On who? What person?
Transcript evaluation.
Oh, yeah. If
Bog it down a little
yeah, and that's another good point. Is if you have one person that does transcript evaluation, they take a vacation. Hey, it's a little longer. Yeah, we did run into that as well. Sure.
I didn't mean to can I back up?
Sure.
Let's go back to that conditional acceptance.
Oh, sure.
You said, what does it mean? It really doesn't mean anything. So then tell me what can happen, what a student's allowed to do with a conditional acceptance.
When-
What will you do with them with conditional?
From our school.
Yes.
He's asking what our students do with, or what we do with a conditional acceptance. Well, a lot of times our students will have an unofficial transcript. They'll have the ability to access that. So we'll say, well, can you send us your unofficials? If we're familiar with the school, and a lot of this, you mentioned that there's about 8 schools that we deal with on a primary basis. That's probably true for us as well. They send in those unofficial transcripts. The admissions counselor evaluates them and gives them, hey, you will be, based on your evaluation, if these are correct, if your GPA is correct, if these courses are correct, there's a lot of conditions in there. You will be accepted into our program, blah, 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 blah. And then we put on the receipt of your official transcript. It's just an email. There's nothing formal in their file or anything like that. It's just an email to let the student know, hey, you're a qualified student for our school. And that's all it is.
At what point is registration happening?
Registration, we will not register a student unless we have all their stuff in.
Okay.
Yeah, we will not register students. Okay, yeah, we do not register. Yeah, some schools will register students on unofficials. We will not do that.
It does a couple more things too. It also
Sure.
lets them know how many credit hours they may get,
Yep.
how long they may have decisions that they're going to make to come to your school or not. They're going to have better answers to those questions. We'll also do a sample registration because it can be
Yeah.
excited about, so we'll go, this is your possible schedule, and it's just the students into the culture, which is what your AC is trying to do in that first visit, is really stitch them in. And so it gets them excited, they start kind of presenting like they're students. So they're less likely to block.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I want to do with this whole presentation is kind of just bring the best practices out and let us hear kind of what we're doing. Because like I said, I'm just talking about one school.
I've been thinking of a strategy because I feel it's going to be very difficult to sell conditional admission to a faculty.
It is very difficult.
However, I'm thinking I might be able to sell a conditional admission to faculty as long as the student is not admitted into the program. So that indeed, we can say you're admitted to the college, you can take a gen ed course, you can do this, but you're not in the program yet. And part of that's driven by the fact that we're starting online RMVSN. And of course, that cannot happen
Yeah.
with them. But we could admit the student to the college, and as
Sure.
soon as everything's in place, then put them in the program.
Yeah, and you've just removed a barrier. You just removed a barrier. So, okay, let's move on. I don't want to run out of time here. So Green Acres. So what is it? What happens from the student to the start? So let's say my student, we're working with that. AC calls the student after the student has all their application materials in, their acceptance letter was received, and then I'm calling them 1 week prior to see if they're attending and to see if they send in their deposit. Director tracks efficiency by having the AC submit the leads, apps, start ratios. So the AC would report how many leads, apps, and starts they have for that particular month or whatever we're tracking. What do you see here as far as barriers? That enrollment deposit that we talked about. Yeah, how many of do your schools have that? No. See, and that was one of the things I'm like, we don't want to. That's just a barrier for a student.
And if you do have it, they could look it up and know that it was received rather than calling to find out.
Well, some schools. Yeah, some schools. Yeah.
That's true, I don't have access to
Yeah.
financial
Yeah.
information.
Well, at our institution, we still institute an enrollment deposit for the traditional bricks and mortar campus.
Traditional, yeah.
We actually set up different procedures and structures to separate them out because of the different needs that we have.
Sure. Yeah, and then the other thing as far as the director, it's very important. They're the holder of these lead sources. They're not tracking where they come from. How do you know what's your best lead sources for your students? Of course, word of mouth is going to be good. But if I'm in 7 different directories and I have 3 different email campaigns and I'm not tracking any of them, how do I know what's working and what's not? I don't. So that was very important for us is to be able to track where they're coming from and how many of them start, et cetera. Yes?
Is the AC responsible for generating any of the leads, or does that come from specifically the marketing, or does that the entire different department for that?
Okay, she's asking if the AC is responsible for lead generation. They can generate leads through expos and through networking events, but as far as online stuff, the marketing, the director does all of those. So, good question. Okay, so general barriers, and I want to get into some discussion about kind of what we're doing or what barriers we're facing, and maybe we can kind of collaborate and figure some stuff out. Number one, technology's role in the process. Like a lot of our stuff, and maybe a lot of yours, was technology driven, like the whole application thing, the whole paying fees online, and the ability to integrate with systems. So we had quite a few systems. We had a system for students. Okay, I got some smiles. You guys are with me here. And then I had a system for prospects, right? And then I have a system for Learning House. And how do I make all of that work? Because I'm entering. Okay, so that's a technology thing that we're honestly still working on. It is very difficult as far as integration with systems. So that is definitely a general barrier, I think, in our world. And I see some head shaking. So that's something that can really make things a lot easier for us. And we've made some really big strides there. Alfred Chandler, and this may be me being a complete nerd, but I do love school, as you probably heard from my bio. So Alfred Chandler once said that strategy follows structure. Alfred Chandler, familiar with him? He was a GM, CEO for a while, did some stuff with the multi-divisional firm and blah, 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 boring stuff. So strategy follows structure. And that's kind of what our philosophy is when we evaluate this whole process is what was causing complexity in our structure? What was causing this stuff? And a lot of it is our changes in general. Structural changes over the years. The ability of, hey, let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. So a lot of structure changes were actually causing more complexity in our structure. And it kind of just built up over time. So we call that structural mitosis. Product proliferation, we had products that, and in this particular part, it was degrees, that we were marketing that were completely unsuccessful. I heard a yes. So we realized we've got to bite the bullet and get rid of them, because they're not working. All it is sucking up resources and making other things less efficient, okay? Process evolution, that's the whole integration thing. How are we processing stuff? How can we make it simpler? We've got to get rid of these barriers. And then just, general habits of managers. So this is kind of what causes of complexity. So we base this off the model of, I can never say his name, Ashkenaz, who wrote he does a lot of writing on complexity in organizations. So his last name is Ashkenaz. He did a Harvard Business article. And this is where this comes from. And our goal was to simplify and streamline. So we set a target to reduce complexity. And it is in every one of our meetings. Like that is one of the things we start off is we'll ask our admissions counselors and our student support, where do you see complexity? Where are things difficult? Where is it hard to convert? And we'll go through that process. And then we'll create performance metrics and incentives for finding complexity in our organization. So we had an admissions counselor solve one of our issues with the way we were designing spreadsheets for uploading. I don't know if you're really, the Learning House requires you to upload a spreadsheet to register students if you're far behind, which we guess are. But they created a solution to make everything integrate so all the spreadsheets were the same across the board. So we gave them an extra day off. Something like that to create kind of incentives for complexity, for figuring out complexity. And then we just consolidated. My job has completely changed. We don't have an online and regions. I heard a lot of people mention regions. So our adult and graduate studies, we have enrollment and student support, and everyone recruits for everything. So we got rid of I don't know if you've dealt with this, the bickering and fighting in the halls of online versus on-site recruiters.
Stole my student.
Yeah, that's it. You stole my student. Yeah, we got rid of that. Now, that's probably not, I don't know if that's an industry best practice or not, but it worked for us, okay? It's worked for us. So that kind of helps simplify that. And then we phased out products that were low value, like I said, that didn't work, and that was the fight. You know, a lot of times is something's been around for so long, and they just don't want to let go. And I'm like, you're losing a fortune. So we had to do that. And then we developed a process for evaluating what do we add to our products. They mentioned the iPeds report. I don't remember if it was in a large session or a small session. You know, you can look at your radius for free in a 100-mile radius of what programs these students are going into. So the iPeds report, I'm sure most of your schools send information to there. Well, that's one of the things we did is evaluate marketing in the areas. Well, what degrees are in demand? What don't we have? How can we diversify our portfolio? And then we created decision strategies at the lower levels, so decentralized strategy, rather than having to do 4 or 5 iterations to get approval to go to an education fair or make a marketing decision. So we've decentralized that. And then we tried to counter communication overload. I'm the worst. I send like 4-page emails. So I've tried to counter that in a way, is how are we communicating to our people? I don't want to overwhelm them. You know, I don't want them to say we're implementing all this new stuff and throw it out on them. So we try to make our meetings productive. So we have bi-monthly meetings instead of a monthly or weekly, and really try to hit the highlights and send them home. So, but now what I really wanted to do is just kind of hear some of your thoughts. And I know we've had, you guys have talked to them already. And if you want to come up to the mic, they are recording us. So what are some barriers facing your school? Or what are some best practices that you have that you'd maybe like to share or anything like that? Can you grab the mic? Yeah. No, you're good.
I'm Chris Houck. I'm the Vice President of Enrollment Management at Brush University in Owensboro, Kentucky. One of the things that we've learned, and we've been doing online, Greg helped me 5-6 years now, is that, I've heard a couple of comments about, well, how do I do this? How do I get them to buy into this? One of the things that's worked for me as an executive of the college is to ask the question, how frequently does this problem exist? One of the things I've noticed, especially in higher education, it seems like, is we are committed to problem stating, not problem solving. So it's mostly about, well, this is a situation and this is the solution to this problem, but yet we find, and my staff's kind of shaking their head because I ask them this all the time, is if we only come across a problem 1 out of 1,000 times, it's not really a problem. If we make a mistake 1 out of 1,000 times, it's just human beings making mistakes. And I think that if you could take that strategy back to your campus, back up decision making with data. The registrar's office at our campus is extremely problematic, and this year I have assumed control. None of us have any problems with librarians or registrars or anything like that, but we brought in all of that process this year into the enrollment division, which was very, very difficult. But I kept bringing data and saying, these are problems, and it was 1 in 5 problems, not 1 in 1,000 problems. So I'd be interested to kind of hear how are you all solving these types of issues on your campus to be more efficient?
Yeah, we just brought the registrar function under enrollment as well, and it was a battle, but it's definitely helped with the process. So, what are the barriers, best practices, solutions you found?
Can I ask this question?
Sure.
The question is, which of our schools have online enrollment right now? The
Okay.
students themselves can actually go in and register themselves for their classes.
We do not. Yeah. Okay, there's not many. Yeah. Yeah, online, and that's been something we've discussed as well, the whole student self-registration, but we use CAMS. Any CAMS fans? All right. Yeah, so we've struggled with this process. Okay. Yes. I can, you can,
That'd be great.
yeah.
Love the presentation, love the notion of 2,000 leads. Most of us are small liberal arts colleges. We have a budget of probably $350,000 for all programs across the state, traditional, non-traditional.
Oh.
Our admissions counselors have to be PELs, but and the conversion rates are higher on it. but
Sure.
It's when you're talking about 100 to 120, we're trying to get 75 a year out of our ACU.
Sure.
And we hire, you know, you get people from the for-profits, you think you've got a gold mine, they're used to getting leads. And so when you get experienced ACs, yeah, they're great at working leads that they get. Anybody else have a challenge? Where are you getting your leads?
Yeah,
Where do you find them?
she's talking about facing the budget issues as far as admissions counselor. She's saying, you know, with her budget, she's not able to get enough leads for them or possibly enough leads for their goals.
We started to recycle out of our high school population. We were at the 30-year record enrollment level, and we're doing about 10,000 leads in the traditional high school format. And 3 years later, what we'll do is we'll go after those 10,000 leads with
Yep.
emails, kind of teasers, just to say, hey, are you in college? And if they respond to that lead, it might only be 1% of those. So you might only get 100 leads that way or recycled. But you start doing that year after year, it just kind of adds to your advertising and marketing things that you're doing.
Yeah, I didn't talk much about recycled leads. That's a big part of what we do as well. And you know, you'll have to have the cannibalism talk. You know, that'll come up. Well, you're stealing my students or blah 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 blah. But so that's something we had to deal with as well. You know, I don't know if it's at your school, but oh, good, okay. Take them, please. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times we have found, you know, in the past, and you guys may be like, well, duh, Ryan, you should have did that 5 years ago. But in the past, at education fairs, we were only promoting on-ground programs for a while, and then we just now started promoting online as well. And we've actually had some success with recruiting online students at education fairs, probably more than even traditional on-campus. So.
That's what you recruit at the education fair when you do both, or you do undergraduate and graduate as you recruit the adult parent.
Sure. Yeah. She says you're recruiting the parent. And yeah, we've seen that a lot. Like just the other day, we had students come on, like when the parents visit campus, we always do a presentation to them about adult programs and graduate programs at Bryan. So if they're having a big event, we're there just to answer questions. So, yes.
To address the question about registration, one thing that we did was actually work with academics. So the student doesn't have any decision-making process in registration. It's all one step. And that has eliminated that barrier. So the student doesn't actually have to worry about registration at all. We handle it all. It's a service issue. But that has really helped eliminate that as an issue. We do have camps as well. So we handle that side of it. And
Yeah, we do that as well. Just I don't know if that's a CAMS thing or just in general. So, yes.
I apologize.
Sure, you're fine.
I actually asked this question a year ago. May I ask it again?
Sure.
And it's not exactly involved with this session, but in a way it is.
Sure.
What is the numbers allowed in an online class? How many students are allowed in an online class? And that does fall in sometimes
Sure.
with accommodating student needs. So
We do, our max is 20 to 25, and then we'll split them. So if we have 50 people registered, that's 2 classes. We try not to put, it doesn't really happen, I can't even remember it happening. We put more than 20 to 25 students in a class. Because you find if you have, that's a lot to handle for an online course, so.
I'm Marshall Ashley, Missouri Valley College. I am the registrar. by
All
the way,
right.
So I thought I'd come up here and intimidate you a little bit. Sure. We actually have a good relationship with our admissions office.
Do you like Tennessee? Would you want to come down? Yeah.
I would be interested in knowing us. We are new to online. We're getting ready to start our 3rd year, and we have a different fee structure for online, and that has proven to be problematic when students change from face-to-face to online, back and forth, and explaining our fee structure. I'd just be interested in a show of hands, how many have the exact same fee structure, tuition for their online as face-to-face?
You're talking about face-to-face and adult and non-traditional?
Just traditional.
Oh, traditional. No.
Traditional. Do you have the same fee structure for your online as face-to-face? Yes.
Oh, okay.
And everybody else has a different fee structure?
Mm-hmm.
But only
That wasn't the answer I was looking for.
in our system, we only have one billing code though, so everything has to be manually done if the student's switching or taking two programs.
No, we just paid a huge customization fee for our student information system to have different curriculum codes is what we call it. But
So you have a lot of
problematic.
traditional switching to non-traditional?
Not a lot, but if you have 5, that's 5 manual entries you have to
Sure,
do,
one
and 5
in-
mistakes that
yeah.
could easily be made. So
Yeah,
we paid the customization.
interesting. Yes, sir.
Jim Brown, I'm Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at Utica College. We're in upstate New York. We have about 2,300 active and inactive students across 11 programs. The conversations have been fascinating, but one of the biggest barriers that we have found in some cases as we're working through this is we're a traditional ground-based undergraduate residential Commonwealth Hall campus. Everybody else is an annoyance, except when the checks come in. So from the online space. But the biggest barrier that we found, this isn't a slam, it's a typical response, I think, that as an evil administrator that I'm frequently referred to on the campus, is that we're trying to extract traditional faculty roles for advising admissions and similar processes out of the faculty so they can do what they do best and leave that to administration. So we're in the process now, all of our directors and coordinators for various programs historically are doing advising, trying to teach some loads. There's all the issues of course load and everything that plays into all these conversations, but one of our biggest barriers is beginning that extraction process. And believe it or not, some of the traditional folks that are still in the 19th century aren't going to want to come out and do these things, but the folks that are your mass of people that are very supportive are happy to get rid of some of these tasks that have just been thrown on them because it's been the way we've always done it. So extracting the faculty out of the admissions process, our faculty are less involved in that. They set up the rubric, they set up all the academic guidelines, they set up hiring for adjuncts and everything else, and the administration side of it handles that aspect. So that transition's been successful for us.
Similar structures with that? Yeah, a few. Interesting. We haven't dealt with that one yet.
I have a procedural question.
Sure.
You're talking about conditional acceptance, and you're talking about they can't be registered, but they can start classes. But from an online point of view, how does that work?
You're talking about
If they're not registered, how do they?
Are you talking about conditional? We were talking about unofficial transcript evaluation. Conditional acceptance, that would be a little different. That would mean that they don't meet some kind of criteria. Is that similar for yours? Like if we require a GPA of 2.0 and they have a 1.9, they can be conditionally accepted if they petition. If they are awarded conditional acceptance, then they are allowed to register. But I will not even take someone even to conditional acceptance until I have their official transcript documents. So I may conditionally accept them. They're going to have to have a GPA above the requirement. I'm going to have to see their unofficial transcripts. And that's when I'll issue, we have a conditional acceptance based on receiving your transcripts.
So do you ever, or does anybody here allow students to start classes before those official transcripts get in and before the official?
The only thing
So how do we do this as far as registration goes, as far as getting them in online courses?
We have a non-degree code that
Yeah.
we can use.
Ours just aren't allowed to apply for financial aid.
That's the key, yeah.
So there's,
You make that up front.
yeah, they're saying their conditional acceptances are not allowed to apply for aid and they're a non-degree seeking student.
And we do, what we do with ours is basically that we allow them to start that first term, but then they're blocked from any registration
Yeah, for people to
afterwards.
do that.
So they can get those first classes out of the way, but they can't continue on the program until everything is in.
Do they get grades and et cetera?
Yeah, so
before
they can take those courses, pay for those courses, they get grades, but they can't go any further.
Yeah, and we found with unofficial transcripts, like we found that if someone mentioned that or mentioned the idea of their admissions counselors helping get those transcripts in, we were trying to take that away on the front end. Like we'll have our admissions counselors fax over their transcript request, all they have to do is sign it, it's sent directly in. That way on the back end, there's not so much tracking and processing and figuring out if they made their conditional or got their documents in. So that's one of the ways we tried to reduce it is let's help them get it in on the front end because it saves us a lot of work on the back end, a lot of
You
hassle.
pay the transcript request fees that schools have.
Not usually, no.
How do you literally do that? Because the institutions, of course, have to have
Their own.
the students' permission.
Right. We have all of our PDF things of all the different schools. So we fill out the form to them, send them to the student, they sign it, and they'll either fax it in or we'll fax it in for them. So we fill out everything for them and they do it.
How do you take care of paying the fee, though, if you're not paying?
Most of our schools directly, we'll have the student pay it if there's a fee. But some of these community colleges in Tennessee, they don't have transcript fees, so we don't actually run into it that much. Because most of our people are 100-mile radius of us, just as I'm sure yours are as well. So.
Question for those that are allowing the student to actually enroll and take their classes on unofficial documentation. We used to do that at Russia, and then we abandoned that process because of the frequency of the fraudulent applicant not listing schools that they've attended. We find it out on their FAFSA application, from their NLSDS records. I guess my question is twofold. One, are you all running into that similar problem? And two, how are you dealing with that problem?
Yes.
We use Student Tracker from the Clearinghouse, and it'll show any other institution they've been to. We just, if there's a gap in enrollment, so anytime there's a break in enrollment, we'll just look at that real quick. It's an easy task to run, and if you don't have that service, it's like $300 a year, it's minimal.
We just signed up with them last year, so I'm good. I'm glad to hear that.
Student Tracker, I use it for applicable schools.
So you know immediately what's missing. It's kind of like what we're doing on the NLSDS side, but we have to wait until the financial aid application.
And what was the name of that?
It's the
Student Tracker?
Student Clearinghouse,
Student Tracker for that. Okay.
One of the things you may want to consider, it's just the scalability issue, is that as you allow yourself into more manual processes, one of the things we found out very quickly, we used to have conditional admits as well. When you want to get them in, you want to get them engaged. I think there's other ways to do that. The problem we found is we track the student who we conditionally admitted, the self-directed learner who really wants to get into this program is going to get you what you need when you need it. And if they don't get it to you in time, they're not going to get past your first 1 or 2 courses anyway. So all of your efforts that you're making to try to think that you're helping the student really isn't, because you're enabling them to further get lost and they become a loss for you anyway. So your huge investment up front tailors off after your second or third course if they even survive that long. So we made the conscious decision to say, I'm sorry, if you can't get us the stuff that we're asking you on the front end, you're never going to get through your first 2 courses. So it's that balance between you want to be student friendly, you want to be helpful and everything, but you're going to lose them anyway. So
does that student tracker tell you whether or not the student is eligible to have the transcript released?
No.
Because that's another problem that we had is with the 5 schools.
And they owe money for 5 schools.
So we're kind of like, well, we don't let you come here and enroll us.
All right, we probably have time for one more question, solution, barrier you're dealing with. You'll probably make contacts here. You probably want to talk to each other. Maybe you don't want to talk to each other ever again. I don't know. So, guess that's it. Thanks, guys.